Hello, Overcoming Graduation listeners. Welcome back to another episode of Overcoming Graduation with Brian Drury. Tonight, as always, I'm excited to have on my guest, but tonight in particular because my guest tonight I just hired as my own personal life, fitness, and business coach. Now, this guy goes by the name of Peter Scott. He's the founder of the Fearless Mindset Academy, creator of the 90-Day Fearless Fitness Challenge, and what he specializes in is helping high-achieving entrepreneurs to get fit in less time so that they double their income and become unstoppable. Now, Peter, thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Brian, it's an honor, man. I loved meeting you when we did at Sean Stevenson's event, and to be on your podcast is such an awesome privilege, so thank you.
Well, thank you. It's funny, guys. I met Peter just several months ago, and just a few days ago officially hired him as my mentor. So as I've gotten to know him, I knew at this point he'd be the right guy, and there's going to be a whole separate podcast on mentors and on what I'll be doing in the next 180 days with Peter. So buckle up for that. I'm thinking of even doing my first video, but today is about Peter and his story. So it's not about what I'm doing. I have unlimited podcasting time to do that. But so Peter is an amazing guy and is one of the most high energy people I've ever met. I can say that he practices what he preaches 100%, that at the event that we met at, he was working out at 6 a.m., 5 a.m. to make sure he got his workout in, and is an absolutely amazing guy, motivational, and just has this infectious energy to help people achieve everything they've wanted in life and more. So you're going to hear Peter use the word badass a lot. You're going to hear him use words like fearless a lot and really define what that means to him and what it can mean to you. So I've been following Peter's stuff for a while. That's why I hired him, and I believe in his stuff to the utmost. If you see the testimonials that are on his page, you'll understand exactly why this guy is as good at what he does and why people will pay him what they do for his services, because he delivers every time. So Peter, I told you a bit about it before the call, but the way that this always starts out is what I think a lot of the young adults who are just graduating college feel is, okay, wow, look at that guy. I mean, look at all the things he's achieved. You know, he's 30 years old. He's an entrepreneur running a successful business on his own, living in San Diego in his dream area in a beautiful house. So, you know, it seems like such a far disconnect. And the reason I love to get people's stories is because it shows the step-by-step progression of how someone went from just being a college graduate, unsure of the world, you know, what their place was in the world, to achieving these things. So that's why I love the story. So if we could start off by having you tell me and the listeners a little bit about when you graduated college, maybe a little bit about college, what you studied and what you came out as, and then what were your feelings coming out of school?
Absolutely. This excites me so much, Brian, because you know, although the listener may think 30 years is a long ways off when you're 20, trust me, guys, 10 years goes by in a blink. Mm-hmm. It blows my mind to think that it's been, I think, almost 8 years actually for me since I graduated. Mm-hmm. So I went to Ohio State for my undergrad. I studied finance and had always wanted to work in business in some capacity. I didn't know what that was. The way I chose finance, to be completely honest, was through watching movies like Wall Street and Boiler Room, realizing that I could be, you know, incredibly successful financially by going into an industry like investment banking or private equity. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't, you know, suggest or want to say that that is the definition of success. I believe that if you're solely pursuing money or material possessions, then that's actually a misguided view of success, and that was really my experience for the first few years of my career.
And Peter, I was going to say, do you think at that point that you associated success with money?
Absolutely, I did. And the reason, Brian, is really because that's all I knew from family of mine, from the environments that I grew up in, from society, from the media, is that, you know, we're taught to get an education so that we can get a job to make money, right? That's what we're taught to do. The problem is that there's so much more to life than just that. Now, I'm a big believer in wealth creation. I love money when it's purposeful money that can create freedom so I can live the lifestyle that I want to have.
Right.
But and the listener, if you know anything about investment banking, it's a career where I was working 80, 90, 100 hours a week, literally, like 7 days a week, no life, completely neglected my health and fitness, all these things, and just reached a point of being disconnected from my purpose, lacking passion, feeling miserable, all of those things.
And Peter, for the and I think I was going to say as well, the reason that you love money is you're not in love with money and gaining money itself. You're in love with the lifestyle it allows you to create, and for the difference it allows you to create in people's lives. Because when you're not worrying about paying your bills and you're not worrying about how you're going to make your car payment, you're able to focus more creative energy on how you can create a bigger impact in the world.
That's exactly right, Brian. I mean, I believe that money is a byproduct of value creation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a result of creating value in people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
If you can create immense value in people's lives, then you should earn money proportionate to that value.
Right.
And so that's the key, is that I'm not attached to green pieces of paper with pictures of dead presidents on them. You know what I mean? It's what that money represents. It's stored energy. And especially, and I'll talk more about my career evolution and my transition into becoming an entrepreneur, I fell in love with with wealth creation even more as an entrepreneur, because I believe entrepreneurs are the producers of the world. They help make the world go round by creating valuable products and valuable services that improve humanity, like our existence.
Right.
So I have a deep purpose around money and wealth creation, in almost a way, Brian, where it's like a spiritual experience for me. Like to be an entrepreneur and to create something that does not exist. Mm-hmm. Like I've got a vision, right, for something in my mind, and I have the ability to bring that into reality. That is spiritual. That's spirituality to me.
Oh, honestly, man, I was gonna say I honestly totally agree that. Yeah. I mean, we were just talking about that just last night. I finished the final edit of my book, and I have a quote here that Sheila actually shared with me, and
yes.
And it said, "It's accomplishments don't start in reality." It was actually one of my last blog posts, and it's from The Mental Edge by Kenneth Baum. I haven't read that yet, but she shared that quote, and as we talked about before the call, there was all the doubt and all the uncertainty and what are people going to think and what's this and what that, but then to now like release it into the world, now that it's on the point where my editor's going to make the final changes and proofread, and then it's going out to the world, there's this excitement because I've created something and I've already seen an impact in the lives of people around me, and it hasn't even gone on shelves yet or out on Amazon. So it's really, I love what you're saying. And what I was going to ask is, so you had this idea when you were, in your early 20s that I'm going to be that guy, I'm going to make that money and just be living the high life. So when you had all that money and that job, how did you find yourself feeling after a couple of years?
Great question. So the first word that honestly comes to mind, Brian, is miserable. Mm-hmm. And it's not because of the amount of money that I had. It's because of the sacrifices and the areas of my life that I neglected.
Right.
I literally did not have time for a relationship. I completely neglected my health and fitness. I was overwhelmed, stressed out, feeling anxious. I mean, I remember days of other analysts, and fortunately I never experienced this, literally having to go to the hospital because they were having heart problems. They thought they were having heart problems because they were having like stress breakdowns.
Right.
That's just the environment of that industry. Mm-hmm. And I will never forget the day I decided to leave that career. And it was one night, I remember it was a Thursday night, and I was in the office at around 10 p.m. And I was doing work at that time. And one of the partners, one of the managing directors of the firm I was at, was in the office as well. Now, there was no reason for him to be in the office. There was no big meeting the next day. There was no project that was due the next day. He literally was in the office because he was afraid of going home, because he neglected that area of his life for so long.
Wow.
He neglected his kids. He neglected his wife. And this is the man that I aspired to become. At 22 years old, I leave college and I see the suits that this man wore, the cars that he drove, the house, the homes that he owned. And that was what I was pursuing. And in reality, he was miserable. And that was a path that I was going to take if I decided to stay in that career. Now, some people, and I want to preface this, some people have like the happiest existence in a career like investment banking. So it's like really getting clear on what you're passionate about, what you enjoy doing. I'm just not built to crunch numbers behind a computer for 90 hours a week. God, no. I love people. I love impacting people's lives. So recognizing that that wasn't my purpose in life, I had to quickly transition out of it as fast as possible.
I mean, just the idea of looking at whose path are you on? It's like if you're on this path to become that director, this person, or this manager, and then you look at what the quality of their life is really like, and you ask yourself, truly and honestly, is that what I want? I think what careers like investment banking, why they're so appealing to a young college grad, like I've talked about many times on this podcast, I graduated with $80,000 in student loans. And you hear about people graduating college and making $70,000, $80,000, doing investment banking. And you're like, wow, man, I could just do that for a couple years and then you know what? I could just be out of it. I just make the money I need and then go get a more relaxed job. But I think what people, don't consider is the lasting impacts it can have on the habits that you create just by, either pounding caffeine to stay focused. I mean, a lot of people get into drugs. I've heard of cocaine being used even in extreme cases. And people they just look at the money. They're not looking at their purpose. They're not looking at what makes them happy. They just think, if I had that much money, everything would be better. Everything would be better. I wouldn't have any problems. But from your perspective, what would you say you learned about that mentality of once I get the money, it'll be better?
Yeah, so it's cause and effect. So the reality is this, guys. Wealth is not a number. Wealth is a feeling. Wealth is not a number. Wealth is a feeling. We think that we're going to become wealthier by making all this money, right? But the reality is, what do we use the money for? We use the money for typically to buy things. Why do we buy things? Why do we buy sports cars? Why do we buy mansions? Why do we buy these things? Because they make us feel a certain way. They make us feel significant, powerful, respected, loved. Wealth is a feeling. If you can figure out how to create those feelings of happiness and abundance and joy in your life, you're going to live a life filled with wealth. And when you operate that way and you feel that way on a daily basis, you're going to produce value in any job or business that you're running. And as a byproduct, you're going to make money. So money is the result. Like money is the effect, not the cause. To put the money first and say you're doing it for that reason will lead to a life of dissatisfaction.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've felt it for myself when all I've been focused on is going to work to get a paycheck. It's just like, I hate my job, but this or that. I felt it sometimes when I worked at my first job because similar to yours, it was just punching numbers into SAP all day, answering emails. And I was like, I'm a person who wants to work with people, who wants to make a difference. And dude, throughout the interview, I was thinking about when I interviewed you, and there's some things I want to do because I know I have an idea where you're going to go with it, but I'll just ask you random little questions throughout.
For sure,
What would you say to somebody who said, well, Peter, you don't get it. My job sucks. I mean, it really sucks. You don't understand how bad I have it.
Well, I can say absolutely I can relate to that because that's the existence that I was in when I was in investment banking. Again, I don't think it gets much worse than working 100 hours a week with people that you don't like or respect when you're treated terribly and you have no life really. So like I say that in a way of like empathizing. So I feel empathy for that person who says that. And what I do know to be true is that your reality is a result of your daily choices and actions. So if there's any area of your life, and I'm speaking directly to the listener on this, if there's any area of your life that you're dissatisfied, the key is to make different choices and actions starting today. If you're dissatisfied with your body and you're overweight, it's because you chose to be. If you're dissatisfied with your career, then you chose to be in that career, and it's your responsibility to make new decisions, to research new opportunities, to acquire new skill sets and become more valuable so that you can go into that career that you're most passionate about and that makes you happy. So I say this with some tough love. You know what I mean? Like I don't believe in hand holding. And what I do know is that you, Brian, myself, the listener, we are all the decision makers at the center of our own existence. And so it's our responsibility, if there's some area of our life that we're not satisfied with, especially our career. It's not our boss's job to fix that. It's not our family's job. It's ours.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things where, and for the listeners, like I said, Peter's not going to baby you. Peter is an intense dude, but it's with your best interest at heart. If you think, oh, well, why is he attacking me? Like, he's not attacking. He and I both, and even though we may have never met you, see and understand that there is greatness in you that you haven't tapped into, that there is potential in your heart that you can release, and it is there. We see it even if you're not allowing yourself to. So and Peter will talk a lot about the victim versus badass mentality.
Yes.
And if you want to be a victim, you can continue living a life that is not everything that you know it can be. If you want to take ownership and step up and step into your power, you can do it. Not going to be easy, but you can do it. So, Peter, you hit a point in your life where you said, I've had enough. And I think a lot of people reach this point. I think there are times where you're in a certain job and you can make changes to improve the circumstances, but ultimately there are jobs that are just not a good fit, and sometimes people need to move on to find something that fits better. So you hit this point and you said, I've had enough. You don't want to be the guy with the nervous breakdown, shaken, being taken out of the office. So what came next in your life?
So it was actually an event in my life that led to the transition from investment banking. And I mentioned the night when I realized, first came awareness. It came to awareness that this wasn't the right career path for me. It wasn't my purpose in life. Even with that recognition, I didn't immediately transition out. Okay. Oftentimes, we wait until the pain is so unbearable before we make a significant life decision. And what happened for me was that at 25 years old, my father, who was only 60, passed away. He was diagnosed with liver cancer. He had been a lifelong drinker, alcoholic, and I can talk more about that and the impact that had on my life. But when he was diagnosed and I saw him literally give up on life, Brian, literally give up on life and drink himself to death over the span of 3 months, it put into perspective for me how fragile my life is, how this is my one chance. Like, this is it. Could there be more? Yeah, but in terms of my reality, I don't know what happens after I die. So this is my one chance. And a career is what you spend most of your waking hours doing for the rest of your life. However you make money, that's what you're going to spend most of your waking hours doing. So I just reached a point of recognizing how fragile life is, how tomorrow is not guaranteed to anyone and to me. And so I said, okay, and I literally left my job. I had no idea what I was going to do. Had no idea. But I quit my job, and I had a mentor I was actually confiding in at the time, and I told her, I said, listen, I'm leaving investment banking. I have no idea what I want to do. Do you have any advice? And she actually recommended a personal development program of all things, and it's a program called Lifebook. And this is actually, Brian, I think I told you how I met our friend, Sean Stevenson.
Yes.
Was through this program called Lifebook. And basically it's a 4-day seminar. You clarify your life vision. You look at every area of your life and you get crystal clear on what you want and the life you want to create. And you actually create a blueprint and a plan to achieve that. And I ended up going through their program as a client. You know, I invested the money. I attended their 4-day session. And it had such an impact on my life that's what sparked my passion for personal growth and for getting into this industry. Because as you said in the beginning, I mentor high-performing entrepreneurs. I'm a coach. That's very different than investment banking. But in the middle was me transitioning into this career with a company called Lifebook, all because of an experience that I had when I went through their program.
Right. And what I love about this portion of the story is, although, like, I know from my own experiences, there's times where that energy, that fuel is coming from fear and doubt and uncertainty. And like you said, just a complete lack of knowing about what's to come next. It's when you're faced with these types of situations, like I was with my mom, with you, with your dad, You recognize that life is not permanent, that you get this chance, you get this life, and people have varying views about what happens after, but we know that we've got this time, however much we get. And so for the listeners as well, what I wanted to point out is personal development and personal growth. Now, I think most of the people listening to this podcast are into it because this is a big message that's coming through my podcast. But for anyone that's doubting it, for anyone that's has heard about the woo-woo nonsense, as many people call it, let me just ask you one simple question. What is it you want to do with your life? What are you passionate about? And one of my favorite questions, what would you do tomorrow if you knew you were going to succeed? Now, the reason that I ask those questions is I would say most people don't know the answers. And if they have answers, oftentimes the answers they give are money, cars, the things they perceive as being what Peter talked about earlier, successful, and people are going to admire me and want to be me. How many of you know the answers to those questions deeply for yourself right now? And personal development is exactly that. It is a personal thing. There's a variety of different coaches, mentors, approaches, but there is nothing wrong and nothing woo-woo about wanting to improve you, improve your experience, and improve the impact you can have on the lives of people around you. So, Peter, so you go through Lifebook and you start working there. And can you tell the listeners a little bit about how you felt? Well, can you tell us first how the job started? Like, how did you get in the door with Lifebook?
Yeah.
And what did it feel like?
Totally. So I went through, as I said, as a client, right? So I wasn't going through in order to work with Lifebook. But at the end of the experience, at the end of the 4-day seminar, I approached their director, their facilitator, and I said, listen, I don't know what you guys need, but I will do anything to support this company and to help share this message and this experience with the world. Mm-hmm. What do you need? Literally is what I did, right? Mm-hmm. And so we got into conversation, and they were actually looking for a salesperson at the time. Now, I had zero experience in sales. None. Like, I was in investment banking, but my background was finance, right? So I was a good guy with numbers, but I loved people. But I was never trained in sales. And so I was completely transparent. I go, listen, I don't care. I told them, I don't have any sales experience, but I will be the best person you hire. I promise you that. Like, take a leap and take a trust, kind of like trust in me is what I asked. And it turned into about a 2 to 3 month process of me interviewing with each person on their team, talking with the founder, really going through kind of a long vetting process because they knew how important this key hire was going to be. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I remember reading a book that I'm sure, Brian, you've shared, and if you haven't, I strongly encourage the listener to read this. This is probably the one book that has had the single greatest impact on my life, and it's Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Mm-hmm. I have not yet read it, honestly.
Okay, so as your coach, this is number one assignment, bro.
Oh, guys, you just got me homework, listeners. Thanks, man.
That's hilarious. So, man, you've got to read that book. And the big message that I took out of that was the power of what Napoleon Hill, who's the author, calls definiteness of purpose. Mm-hmm. Definiteness of purpose is basically having a burning desire on achieving whatever vision is that you have. And I became so committed to getting this job at Lifebook that at one point didn't exist, and then at the next point, like I was not a candidate for this job. I literally had no experience of what they were looking for. Mm-hmm. But I was so committed to doing whatever it took to do that. And I remember like the emails I would write and the things I would like, oh my gosh, it became such a burning desire of mine that I brought that into reality. And whatever it is that you are doing, and I'm speaking to the listener on this, in your current career or a career that you want to create, you've got to have a definiteness of purpose and get clear on why this is the most important thing for you to do.
Right. And for the listener there, if you think about the differences, and if we're just looking at Peter's journey here, at first he thought he wanted to be an investment banker, And then the depth of that went to, well, and Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, but, the depth of that went down to, well, I'll get the money so I can live the life that I want.
Yes.
Whereas when you came to this had so much more depth to the purpose of impacting people's lives, that this process took you from maybe one of the worst, most challenging things you had ever faced, probably the most challenging thing you had ever faced in your life, and helped you through it and helped you find purpose. And so all of a sudden, your day-to-day work is about helping people live more fulfilling, more engaged, more enjoyable lives where they're connecting with people and not neglecting the important parts of their life. So,
exactly. And I want to share something.
Yes.
And I transitioned from a career, Brian, where I was literally making over $100,000, at like my first year out of college as a 22-year-old.
Wow.
And I transitioned from that to a career or a job that promised only, I was only making it. So yeah, because it was all commission. So I was making a base salary of $1,000 a month. So my guarantee was $12,000 to go from $100,000 to $12,000 and say, you are responsible to produce the rest of your revenue or of your income. That's the position that I actually put myself in.
Right.
I chose that because of the meaning it had to me.
Right. And let me ask, so through your investment banking, had you built up some savings that, was a little bit of a cushion during this time?
Yeah, so I did have a little bit of a cushion, so that made the transition easier. But I also, and I'll share, later when you're ready to talk about this, my transition into launching my own business was at a time when I did not have a cushion made probably the scariest decision of my life. So yeah, at this point, I did have a little bit of a cushion, which made it an easier transition. But still, to go from making $100,000 a year or more down to only a guarantee of $12,000 a year was pretty scary.
Right. It definitely, and the thing was, a lot of people go, they hear that number and they go, man, think of the things I could do. But like you said, when you're working 100 hours a week, there's really no time to enjoy. From what I've heard of investment banking, there is no vacation really. There's not you're not taking time off, you're just cranking. But the reason I brought up that question is for the listeners, oftentimes we may look at a shitty experience, a bad job, as just nothing, as a waste of time, as it has no value in your life. So in Peter's case, one, it provided him with valuable lessons on what he did not want in his life and showed him one possible path. But also, although, yes, it was during that time he said he had no life, that money gave him a cushion to be able to take a shot on himself, which allowed him to grow and develop in ways he had never imagined before. So although there may be times where an experience seems like shit or seems awful, seems like a waste of time, you can get a lesson and a message and a purpose out of anything. You can create that even in the worst circumstances. So next time you're in a shitty situation, I say this a lot on the podcast, but hopefully we're getting some new listeners that are just hearing this for the first time. The next time something goes awful, you're standing in the rain, car splashes you, or drives by, splashes you with the puddle, you had a shitty day, look around and be like, what's the message in this? What can I use from this to help people? Or who am I here to meet, or what am I here to learn? And you'll be amazed at how it will change your day-to-day experience and how you view bad experiences. So
one of my favorite sayings, and I forget who said this, but it was some author or guru who said, your message is in your mess. Your messiest moments, your most painful, darkest life experiences are where the biggest transformation happens if you're willing to seek out the lesson.
Right.
And I've experienced that, and I've learned, for most of us, if we experience pain, we try to avoid it. We try to block it out. We try to pretend that it doesn't exist. And I'm going to have you consider that it's much more valuable to experience it fully, all the way to the depth of the abyss, with an effort to have the vision to see the lesson that you need to learn through that challenging moment. And specifically, Brian, I want to share this. I mean, yes, investment banking was not fun. I'm going to be honest. There's no way to sugarcoat that. But I learned valuable skill sets around business and around finance. And that has made me a better entrepreneur, and has made me more successful in my coaching business. And one other thing, and this is totally just happened 48 hours ago, but if I did, so I ended up connecting a an investor from a family fund of about $100 million to a startup company out here in San Diego, a fitness startup company. And they were in a very difficult position where they needed to get another round of funding to get to the next level. And the company was in jeopardy. And so because of my investment banking experience, I ended up having lunch with this guy who's an investor, and I was able to speak his language. I was able to relate to what he was looking for, understand the companies that he wanted to invest in, make the connection to this fitness company, and I just found out they invested $500,000.
Wow.
This has saved the company. This has created jobs. All these things probably could not have happened if I didn't go through the pain that I experienced in investment banking. So like, there's lessons that you don't even know in this point. If you're, not passionate about something, there are going to be lessons that you're going to pull out 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now from what you're going through right now.
That's fantastic, man, and congratulations, because that's great.
Thank you.
And that goes to show, just for the listeners, the power in connections, and that's why it's so important. They talk about not burning bridges. That's a cliche in a lot of ways, but it holds a lot of truth, like many cliches do. Do not burn bridges. One lesson that I had to learn for myself was, you think that, let's say at work, that someone communicates poorly, or someone isn't doing their best work, and you're thinking about, man, they need to change, or they need to get their act together. One, that judgment is just going to tear you down and bring negative energy into you. But two, it is not about them, it's about you. And if they make those choices, that's up to them. But if you're communicating with someone that is difficult to communicate with, you need to step up your level. If someone is impatient, you need to step up your level of patience. And by doing that, you bring the power back to you. You recognize that you're able to do it. It's within you. It is not about other people and your environment affecting you. So, all right, Peter. So we're getting through your story here, and so you're at Lifebook. I always get back. I always bring back.
Yep.
But so you're at Lifebook, and you're feeling this transformation. You're enjoying your job, and I'm assuming things are going very, very well because you just committed wholeheartedly to something that you completely believed in. So can you tell us how many years were you there, and when did you realize that it was time for you to move on from Lifebook?
Okay, so I was at Lifebook for about 4 years, and I remember being on a trip. I went on actually a Lifebook trip. They used to take members to different parts around the world, and we were in Bali at the time. And I was sitting down with the founder, and I was telling him that I wanted to move from Chicago. I love the city, but I was tired of those winters and the snow and all that, right? So
yes.
You can't blame me for that. And he said, listen, as long as you keep up your performance, you can live wherever you want to, which was true. So to have freedom like that was an incredible opportunity. So actually the lesson real quick about that for the listener is, as you guys look for your job, your next opportunity in your career, if it is a job, if it's not a business that you're running yourself, make sure that that job empowers you to live the lifestyle that you want to have. If you love travel, then choose a job that allows you to travel. If all those things. So that was one thing that this allowed me to have. And at the time, I was doing very, very well for the company. I was creating a lot of value. I was making them a lot of money. I was learning how to coach. And then this bug showed up, this desire to become a coach myself. And to wonder, I remember realizing, Brian, that I've had so much appreciation for Lifebook's impact on my life, and I love the value that it created in the lives of others. But the reality was that it wasn't mine. It was created by somebody else.
Right. Yes.
So when I thought about, what is my message? What impact could I have? Me, and the legacy that I could leave. And it started opening up my eyes into seeing, I have the experience to launch my own coaching business. Okay, and I was actually living near Sean Stevenson in Scottsdale. I had moved from Chicago to move out to Scottsdale to live with a friend of ours named Sean Stevenson, who was mentoring me, and he helped me, inspired me to launch a blog.
Peter, you lived with Sean?
I lived literally a block away from him.
Oh, no way.
So, yeah. So,
Okay.
I stayed at this place for a couple of weeks when I moved out there, and then I found a place nearby. And then when I had to move out of that place, he allowed me to sublease his apartment. So yeah, it was a really great time for 7 months.
So he helped. Oh, and just before we move on to the blog, just for to show the progression, because you spent 4 years at Lifebook, and I think a lot of people like you would be afraid. They'd be like, oh my God, I'm going from 100K down to 12K plus commission. Because again, that's investing in and trusting yourself and saying, can I do this? And did you see that your income, as you said, that your income grew as the value you provided for them grew?
Oh, absolutely. So like that's the first time in my life, Brian, where I connected money as a byproduct of value creation. Because especially in a sales role, right? So like for me to become better during a sales conversation, or to generate more leads, to impact more lives, I knew that anyone who went through Lifebook would have their life transformed. So it became my mission to share that experience and make it accessible to as many people as possible. And I became really good at it. And the more people I connected Lifebook with, obviously the more money I made. So it was very, very rewarding. It was very rewarding.
And by the end, if you don't mind sharing a number, it's like, what were you making when you got towards the end of your career with Lifebook?
Yeah, so I actually still wasn't making the amount of money I was making in investment banking. So I took a pretty significant pay cut with them. But what I was making was right around 75,000 is what I did. Now I didn't start there. My first year was much lower than that.
Right.
But again, I was willing to do that because there's something else that I was getting from Lifebook. And this is something I want the listener to consider as they look at opportunities in their career. And yes, you want to get something that compensates you well. That's important. But there's also opportunities like relationships that are very valuable. A lot of people call this relationship capital. Being a coach, a salesperson, a business development guy at Lifebook allowed me to connect with some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world, literally. And literally build relationships and friendships with these people. It allowed me to be mentored by a man who was a billionaire with a B. There's not many of those.
That's crazy.
And I wasn't making the money that I was making as an investment banker, but I was learning improvements in my mindset, and I was learning skill sets and building relationships that I believe are worth far more than the money I was making as an investment banker.
And I would say too, it's like, I just wanted to give some perspective to the listeners, because a lot of people be like, oh, well, I think a lot of times, and we're going to get into this more as we continue through your story, but a lot of times people think it's a decision between happiness and security. It's either I'm going to make a lot of money and be miserable, or I'll be happy and make a little bit of money. But like you said earlier, that entrepreneurs kind of redefine the way the world sees things. They tend to combine both, to combine travel and bring all the good things that they want into their life. And so at this point, you're making $75K a year, which is an incredible salary, especially a couple of years out of college. That's still huge money. But beyond that, you're making lifelong relationships with mentors and people that are changing your perspective on what's possible. You're having mindset shifts. You're helping give that to people. And how would you say the quality of your social life and your life in general outside of work was at that point?
It was amazing compared to when I was an investment banker. Now, I also learned through this process and through working with that company the importance of being selective in your social life and the impact the people that you spend your time with has on your life. So I became very selective, very purposeful, very conscious on who I was connecting with. I remember I actually just wrote a post on Facebook about this. There's a picture of me with my Lifebook, and I'm on the Inca Trail at Machu Picchu. And what I had done is I had this desire to go visit Machu Picchu, and so I emailed, I think, about 12 friends and said, hey guys, listen, I'm gonna go to Machu Picchu in the month of May. These are the dates. Let me know if any of you are in. And I was thinking maybe at the most 2 people maybe would be like, yeah, let's do this. 9 people ended up saying yes, and these were all people that I had either met through Lifebook or were friends of mine that I invited to go through Lifebook, because that's the kind of people I wanted to connect with, people that are adventurous, people that love travel, all of those things. So my social life has tremendously improved because of that. And the clearer I got on my passions, on what I was interested in, when I moved out here, Brian, to San Diego, not knowing anyone, I was very purposeful on putting myself in environments to meet the kind of people that I want to build friendships with.
Mm-hmm. And that's something I think we'll definitely get into once we arrive at that point, because I think that's a huge lesson. And honestly, it's something I'm struggling with right now, is meeting people in a new place, especially, I'm not a shy guy by any means, and I have no trouble talking with people, getting to know people. But one, meeting people that you align with, that share your interests, that you can truly deeply bond with, and it's not just about, all right, I guess it's people to hang with, as long as I have people around me. But also, it's the idea of, I was going to say, with my job, that I travel so frequently, how do I maintain relationships or build up relationships in short amounts of time? And just a quick pause, so you'll probably hear the train going by in the background. And I don't know if I told you, but the train is named Donna. She's a character on my show. And every time she comes by, I help promote whoever I'm talking to. So for the listeners, if you're loving Peter, which I'm sure you are, and you want to find out more about him, please go to thefearlessmindset.com. So thank you, Donna. All right. And we're back.
Thank you, Donna. I appreciate it.
Donna's going to be getting checks from you. Hey, thanks. I appreciate the bump. Donna's doing great. But, okay, so you go through Lifebook, you have worked there, you've gone through the program, you've changed lives, and you've hit this point where you said, you know what, I believe I can do this for myself. So can you tell us a bit about the transition from Lifebook into your own business and creating your own thing?
Yes. So I am living in Arizona. I launch a blog, all right? And that's kind of like my first attempt in saying, okay, let me just start writing stuff that I'm learning online. I didn't know who I was going to coach. I didn't know what my message was, but I decided to talk about fear. Fear became a message that was impacting my life. And so I created a blog called Design a Fearless Life. You can check it out. It's designafearlesslife.com. And what I started doing, Brian, was I literally just started writing about my own journey of facing my fears and the things that I was committed to doing to overcome those fears. And I started to share those on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and people started engaging. They started following. They started sharing how impactful my posts were to them. And it inspired me even more to pursue this. Now, I didn't know how I was going to do this. And so what happened was that I ended up doing both, meaning I had one foot in the door of Lifebook, working with them, and I had one foot in the door of my blog and my potential coaching business. Now, the problem with this is that it spread me too thin. And this is an important thing for you and for me and for the listener on this to realize, is that when you go through a transition, especially if you're launching a business, you've got to be careful in that transition, because what I did is I spread myself too thin and my performance at Lifebook fell off a cliff, literally. Now, the other thing was a passion project. It wasn't a way I was making money at the time. So Lifebook started noticing. They called me up and they said, listen, we noticed you're doing this. We want to have a serious conversation with you and be like, what's your vision? What do you want to do? You want to be with us, or you want to go pursue this thing? And I told them where I was at, and they said, okay, well, here's the deal. We're going to be building out a business development team locally in Chicago, and you're the most experienced guy here. We want you to lead that and to come back to Chicago to do that. And I said, awesome, appreciate the opportunity, but I decided to move out west and live on the West Coast, and I thought I had your blessing on doing that, so I'm choosing not to do that. So literally overnight, Brian, my sole source of income, the money I was making from Lifebook, evaporated, gone. Wow. They realized, okay, Peter's not going to be coming back to Chicago, so we don't have a spot for him on the team anymore.
So basically, they just said at that point, hey man, thanks, but we gotta let you go. That
exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. So no hard feelings. Of course, in the middle of that, it felt terrible. I felt betrayed. I felt, all those things that anyone who's gone through a transition of being laid off or being let go experiences. But as I look back on it from their perspective, it makes sense. They needed somebody in Chicago, all those things, right? So like literally overnight, and these two significant events happened in 1 week. I lost my sole source of income since Lifebook and I went separate ways, and a relationship that I was in ended. And this was a very, serious relationship. It was with a woman that I, saw a future with, all these things. So in my eyes, my world was falling apart. Right.
Yeah, and what I think is an interesting thing, and something that I try to bring up a lot on this podcast is, part of this podcast is me growing to be as honest as I can be and helping inspire others to do the same. And I think when people consider personal development and growth, they hear about something like Lifebook, they think that once they've finished it, right, then everything's going to be cool and they're going to be happy all the time and it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows. But that is not the reality of it. What personal development helps you do is it helps you get through those things, work through those things in a healthy way, and then not dwell on them and not let them incapacitate you. So just for the listeners, personal development is great, but it is not about pretending to be happy all the time. In fact, I think that's detrimental. That's something Peter and I have talked about. Like, you need to experience ups and downs, and you need to go through the shit in life to really enjoy the glory and the good things and the great people in your life. So, Peter, you lose your sole source of income. You have a serious relationship that ends. What were the feelings like, and then what spurred you to action to take your next steps?
Yeah, so the feelings were fear. I was afraid of running out of money. I was afraid of not knowing what I was going to do next in my career. I had the fear of the unknown, of uncertainty, all those things.
And you said at this point, whereas the first time there was a transition being made, there was a financial cushion, there was a little breathing room. You said at this point, that did not exist.
Yeah, so that cushion did not exist.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't a smooth landing, so to speak. And so, and of course, with the ending of a relationship, I had other issues of like feeling lonely and all those things. So it was like the perfect storm of that. And what happened was that I had a decision to make in that moment. I could have tapped my network, gone back to my network in the investment banking world, right? And said, hey guys, listen, I'm looking to come back into the industry. I have got, since then I've gotten 4 years of sales and business development experience. So do you know of any jobs available? And I'm sure I could have gotten a secure job that paid well.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't my passion. That's not what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was launch a coaching business. And what I decided to do was I ended up getting into a conversation with a prospective mentor, a guy named Garrett White. And I had actually talked to him, Brian, about a month earlier about joining his mastermind and getting trained on marketing, sales, and systems to build this business.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The problem was that the investment to work with him was $20,000.
No.
$20,000, right? And so that was, at the time, I said, okay, no, appreciate it, see value in it, but I just can't do it. I don't have the money. Of course, the moment I lose my sole source of income, which is actually even more difficult, right, to make that financial decision,
mm-hmm.
I call him up and I say, listen, send me your wiring instructions. I don't have the money, but I'm going to get it in the next 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up borrowing money from family, and I also ended up taking on a significant amount of debt to join this mastermind in order to learn the skill sets and the mindset to launch my business. I knew I couldn't do it alone.
And Peter, what does Garrett call his mastermind?
Yeah, his mastermind is called Wake Up Warrior.
Mm-hmm.
Warrior. So you can check it out at wakeupwarrior.com. And when you make that sort of investment, Brian, it is one of the scariest and most liberating experiences. And you know this recently, right?
Yes.
So
yeah. It's
so
like you said in our call. It's like you said, Brian, in the future you'll be able to use this story to help people, because for the listeners, and again, I'll have a whole separate podcast on this, but investing in Peter's coaching is the biggest investment I've ever made in my entire life. And it was terrifying. Even though I did all the research, I did the calculations, I made sure I did a full breakdown of, is this the right investment for me? And I just knew in my heart, after all the other questions were answered, I knew this was right. And I know through working with Peter, that's an investment. Like if you went on a trip or to a baseball game and bought box seats and whatever, that money, you do have an experience, you do have maybe a great memory, but that's it. Then the money is gone. Whereas this is an investment to help me grow, to help me through a tough point in my life, help my business grow, and all these things. So I just knew it was right. So for the listeners, if you do the research, if you feel it's right, and you're willing to commit, which God knows I am, it's like if you're willing to commit, and Peter was too, results can and will come if you're willing to commit. It's just you got to be able to invest in yourself and commit to yourself. So
yes. You have to be willing to do it, Brian, with in a place of uncertainty.
Yes.
In a place of not knowing exactly how it's going to play out. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the scariest things. But I knew that by making an investment like that, I literally burned all the boats so that I didn't have a chance to retreat. Like there wasn't an opportunity for me to fail. There really wasn't. Like when I was in that position, I became so committed to taking massive action and to getting my message out there and working with my mentor and building systems and doing all these things that the results that I got became so fast despite the fears I was feeling. Now, it wasn't easy. It wasn't effortless. I had to literally daily, consciously do everything in my power to overcome those fears and those doubts and all of those things. But when I made that commitment, it was just like, okay, I'm in massive action no matter what I'm experiencing.
Right, and you have that driving force behind you.
Yep.
And for the listeners, that's another point, is that when you look at the investments you're making, the things you want to do, a lot of times you'll hear mentors or you'll hear people that claim to be gurus say that they have the magic bullet, that you're going to be able to do it fast and easy and it's going to take no effort and you won't have to change, so you can keep doing exactly what you want and get six-pack abs, have great sex, make $1 million and all those things. If anybody says they've got all the answers, and if they say they're going to make it so easy that you don't even have to think, be careful. That should be a red flag.
Yes.
Because when the mentors that I appreciate, the mentors that I love, and people like Peter that I'm willing to invest in are the ones that say, listen, man, it's not going to be easy. In fact, we're going to do some things that are going to challenge you more than you've ever challenged yourself to grow, but it's with the best intentions to help you work towards your vision. So when you are looking for a mentor and a coach, there are people that will play on your fear. They're going to tell you that you're not enough. They're going to tell you that having loads of money and cash and cars and girls makes you feel great. And I've actually seen these guys. I've seen these videos because I've watched so many videos. They're going to tell you all of this. You're going to feel like shit and feel like you have to pay this money in order to feel better. When the types of mentors and coaches I recommend, I know Peter would too, are the people who make you feel better, who make you feel good about who you are now and want to encourage you to become better than you've ever believed before, so you can be a better person, a better husband, better wife, better whatever, better friend. So just that was I think a really key point, because I think I've been in the program with Peter for a couple days now. Monday was our first coaching call, and there's already changes happening. And I just did, before this call, I got back and I had just done the longest run I've done in a year. And so we're already making change. It doesn't have to take a long time, but it's still going to take the work on my end to make it work. And since I've made this investment and since I trust Peter, I'm going full tilt. So just like you were with Garrett White and the Wake Up Warrior program. So can you tell us about what were the feelings and what were some of the results you started to see after making this investment? And also, what was the business you were growing? Was it still the Design a Fearless Life blog, or was there another venue that you were using to create income?
Great question. So when I launched my coaching business, I didn't know exactly what my message was. I didn't know exactly who I was going to serve. And what I did is this is really interesting actually, I turned Facebook into my personal journal for the world to read, basically. And I literally chronicled my journey of losing my job, to losing a relationship, to investing $20,000 of money that I didn't have into a mentor, to launching a business from scratch with no money coming in. And I just started to talk vulnerably about what I was going through and the lessons I was learning. And I got clearer and clearer and clearer through working with my mentors that my passion is, there's two real core pieces to my message. One is creating a fearless mindset. Like, not when I talk about being fearless, Brian, I don't mean being without fear. I don't think that's ever possible. The most successful people on the planet experience fear all the time. What being fearless is having the courage to act in spite of those fears. So I was feeling those fears of inadequacy, of judgment, of failure, of all those things. But I took so much action in my business that became a message that I was talking about. And the way I started to experience and create opportunities for me to face my fears started in my body, started with fitness for me. So things like skydiving, things like hiking Half Dome in Yosemite to overcome my fear of heights, putting myself through grueling, intense CrossFit workouts. All these things expanded the capacity of my life and my perception of myself. And so like over time, my message became clearer and clearer and clearer. And what I started feeling was a level of certainty, a level of confidence, a level of power that I had never experienced in my life before. And the lesson I want to share is that we often think we need to feel confident before taking action. We need to feel certain. We need to feel courageous. Here's the truth. Confidence is a result, not a requirement.
Absolutely.
Confidence is a result from doing that thing that you're afraid of doing, from launching that product, from talking to that girl, from starting that fitness challenge. Confidence is going to be the result from you putting yourself in an environment that scares the hell out of you and doing everything in your power to create the results that you want.
Awesome, man. I love it. And I can speak from it just from last night, because I honestly, for the past month, I felt off. I felt confused, scared, doubting. I mean, like, part of it was my book. I was thinking about my mom, just all of these things.
Yeah.
And then finishing that final edit was this huge relief, was this burst of excitement, was this affirmation to myself that yes, I can do it. And I feel like a totally different person than I did for the past literally month. And it's amazing. And it's one of the hardest things I've had to do in terms of a physical challenge, or I'm not a mental and emotional challenge. And but like you said, the confidence now is like, I did it. And then it always brings up the next question of, I wonder what else I could do. So
yes.
So you're taking on all these. Oh, and also for the listeners, I remember you put up a post just a couple of weeks ago about the transformation from your body as an investment banker and your body when you're now in your coaching and through
Yes.
your other endeavors. So can you give the listeners an idea of what that looked like?
Yeah, for sure. So I was in a position, guys, where I was never working out. I was eating terribly. Like, I was eating all processed foods, fried foods. Again, sitting at a desk for 14 hours a day, more than that some days. So I had gained a lot of weight after college, and I felt terrible. I mean, I remember walking up a flight of stairs and like being short of breath. I remember lacking confidence and that power that I felt when I was younger in my body. And I just reached a point. It was actually that point when my father passed away, of really having the wake-up call of how fragile life is, and I made some significant changes in my body. Now, what the changes weren't some drastic diet. It wasn't something where I removed everything that I enjoyed in my life. It was something that I made small changes that became a permanent lifestyle change with the way that I used my body and the food that I put into my body. And now I'm in literally the best shape of my life. I feel incredible. I have more energy than I ever imagined. I'm able to think clearer, focus longer, feel more confident, all those things. And it really happened from just reaching a level of pain and realizing this is not what I want to do with the rest of my life. Like, I don't want to feel this way anymore.
Absolutely. Love that.
So many people think that one of the biggest excuses why people neglect their health and fitness is because they're too busy. They're focused on their business too much. Listen, I have met billionaires who have the level of wealth to do anything they want, to travel the world in the highest level of luxury, but are so out of shape that they don't have the energy to hike the Inca Trail or climb the Great Pyramids, and they're miserable. They're missing out on the greatest adventures of life. So for you that are building your, either in a career and you're wanting to make more money, yes, that's important, but do it in a way where you have a great quality of life, and the foundation of a great quality of life is your health and fitness.
Absolutely, man. I love that. And for the listeners, if you think about it just in a way, think back to college. When you were well rested, you'd eaten a good meal, you'd just done a workout, how clear were you thinking? Your blood is pumping, your endorphins are flowing, good, rich, oxygenated blood is flowing through your veins, you feel confident, and then in those times, you tend to have your best ideas, or all of a sudden you retain more information, you're able to connect the dots easier. It's, a lot of people have that idea, if I just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, I'll get there faster. But they never define there, and they also don't enjoy the ride. So when they do arrive there, like Peter said, they end up being, this person has all the money in the world, but doesn't have the one body that they've been given in a state that it can allow them to go explore and experience the world. And through that time, it's like you're missing relationships, you're missing connections, you're missing the joy of just human life. So, all right, Peter. So you're going through this coaching business, and I know you've got a time limit coming up, so I want to make sure we get plenty of time to talk about your current job. So can you tell us, it's hard to call it a job because I know how much you love it. And just a quick question, are you standing right now?
I am standing. I always stand. So, I know the answer to that. That's
so for the listeners, on our first coaching call, we were about halfway through, and I said, Peter, are you standing? And he's like, yeah, man. He's like, I just can't sit. Like, that's the type of energy and enthusiasm that you can have living your dream and your purpose if you're willing to step outside your comfort zone and take some shots. So I was like, I bet he's standing up. I got to ask him. But all right, so can you tell us how you moved from that blog and starting into your entrepreneurial endeavors, your first one ever, into what you're doing now?
Yeah, for sure. So my first message came around health and fitness, because health and fitness has always, Brian, been a priority of mine. When I was a kid, I was raised by two parents who neglected that health and fitness. Both my mom and dad were alcoholics, battling with alcoholism, drug addiction, did not prioritize that. And so for me, I found power and safety through my body. Mm-hmm. And so literally, I was able to overcome the preconditions that I was told at a young age of I would turn into an alcoholic, of I'm just going to commit into my fitness. Mm-hmm. And it created amazing results in my life. And so when I started coaching, I said, this is what I know and from my own life experience, and this is what I can serve people on, and this is what I'm most passionate about. So I started working with entrepreneurs. Now, something happened with my first few coaching clients that I didn't realize when I started, and that was the impact their business was having because of their commitment to their fitness. Mm-hmm. You see, I have a saying, being fit gets you paid. So I remember one of my clients in particular, this guy in San Diego who owns a bunch of fitness studios, but was neglecting his fitness because of his demanding lifestyle with his businesses. I started helping him commit to daily habits and rituals around nutrition and fitness, where he had more energy and felt more confident. And literally in 90 days, he had doubled his income. Doubled his income. And so I started seeing this connection of the people that want to make more money think if they just worked harder, they would make more money. The reality is that you want to have more energy, think more clearly, be able to focus longer, all those things. And then the result is making more money because of that. And what you do is you literally collapse time. You get done in 4 hours, what will take another person 12 hours. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I do. I work with very high-performing entrepreneurs, and I help them commit to daily rituals and habits that produce more energy, confidence, and power in their life so they can make more money.
And for the listeners, if you honestly look at your day right now, and you honestly look from the moment you wake up to the moment you sleep, think about how many hours per day you are thriving and operating at 100% and just on all levels. You're energetic, you're positive, you're thinking clearly. And for many of you, I think, because I've been in moments like this a lot, and just recently, it's zero. Like, there are many days that I felt like I'm not operating at full potential at all. And so working with someone like Peter, imagine just, let's say, an 8-hour workday. Imagine a 25% increase. So you go from, let's say, I was going to say zero, but I was like, that's not 25%. But imagine going from 0 hours of productivity to 2 hours, and then all of a sudden in 2 hours you're getting done what was an entire day's work before, and then now you've got energy, you've got enthusiasm, you're able to deliver more value and then get more value back in return. Yep. And it comes in everything, guys. It is not just about your job. I think far too often we make the distinction between our job and our real life. It is all life. You're living through all of it. There isn't like a pause button while you're at the office. So keep that in mind, that although a lot of times people go like, oh, well, what's the point of improving myself if I can't have 8 hours of perfect, clear focus? Guys, if you could have 2, 3, 4, or 6, it would make a monumental difference in your life. And Peter, can you tell us about what it felt like when you actually transitioned and moved to San Diego, to the thoughts and feelings around living in your ideal place and living your dream job?
I remember when I moved into my condo here, and I'm looking out my window right now at the Pacific Ocean, so I'm literally right on the beach. Mm-hmm. And I had just moved in, and I'm walking on the beach, and I am overcome with emotions. Literally, like, I start crying, and it's almost embarrassing to say, but I was overcome with emotions because of the transitions that I made from the living environments that I was in, to the people that I surrounded myself with, to being in a career that I was miserable in, to launching a business that became my purpose in life. And a lot of it came because I took the time to think about the life I wanted to live. I took the time to clarify what my ideal body would look like and feel like, what the relationships in my life, what I wanted those to be like, the amount of money I wanted to make. And I just became so ruthlessly committed to taking the daily actions that make that happen. I was overwhelmed with emotion when that happened. And I want to really, really stress that it wasn't easy. You know, when you said earlier, Brian, about people making, the false promises, right? Results without effort. If you guys want results, it's going to take massive effort. And doesn't mean you have to suffer your way to success, but it's going to take some commitment, it's going to take some sacrifice, some self-discipline, all these things to produce the highest quality of life. But why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do this? This is your one life right now in this moment.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, man. I love that because, and I think what you said is so key. We in our society hear the word effort and hard work and think pain and suffering. We don't associate that with good things. But I think what we often forget so many times is that like hard work, dedication, and being committed, it brings about so much more joy and excitement and fulfillment that, all right, in a workout, especially your first couple weeks, right? When you're, let's say you've never worked out before and you're starting, or you're just coming back after a long break. Yep. It hurts. It does. You have pain, you have lactic acid buildup, you're stiff. Yep. But then after a couple weeks, it becomes routine. And then there's a little less soreness. And then there's a little more energy. And then all of a sudden, you're getting encouraged by your workouts and you're craving it. And those same principles can apply to your life, is that you could create a life that is at the point where you're excited to jump out of bed. You're not snoozing your alarm and looking around and going, oh, God, not another day. You've shifted and pushed yourself and worked hard and created a place where you can wake up every day excited, thrilled, and totally enthusiastic about what you're going to do. And although I know many people don't believe that, I know listening to it now that people might be like, well, yeah, sure, but maybe somebody else, or maybe it could be you. All of these success stories, people like Peter, all of the Garrett White, all the different people we've mentioned on the show, they all were in your shoes at one time. If you listen to all these guys, you listen to the other interviews I've done, everyone who has suffered through some shit, has been at a bad point and has decided to make a change. There's a new success story happening every day, and it could be you. And you could be the person being interviewed on my show in a couple weeks, couple months, based off the changes you've made in your life. So
one of my favorite sayings, Brian, is this: it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. You know what I mean? Like, it's so easy for us to look at the people that we view as successful. Mm-hmm. As a coach, it's so easy for me to look at the, very well-established speakers and authors in the industry and create a gap from where they are to where I am. But the reality is it didn't happen overnight. They put in the time. And I'm not going to say it takes you 10 years, it can take you far less, but it is a process. And another principle, and I'm going to share this now just because it's coming through me, but success is not a straight line. And I'm saying this to a listener because I'm putting myself in your shoes. At 20 years old, at 21 years old, at 22 years old, if you don't know what you want to do with your life, that's okay. Like, yes, I encourage you to take time to think about it and to do the best thing, to choose the right major and go into a job or in the industry that you're passionate about. But the reality is in a couple years, you may be doing something different. When I was 11 years old, I wrote a letter to my grandfather. And he was a very, very successful CEO in his career. And I remember when I was a kid, when most kids wanted to become, firefighters or policemen or play in the NBA, all I wanted to do was become like my grandfather and become a CEO. And I wrote a letter at 11 to my grandpa, and I said, Grandpa, could you teach me how to become a CEO? And he wrote me a letter back, and he said, sure, when you come visit this summer, we'll schedule a meeting and in my office, and we'll have a long discussion about how you do this. And I remember dressing up for this meeting. I'm a little kid, and I walk into his office, and he has this whiteboard in his office, and he draws CEO at the top and entry level at the bottom. And he said, son or grandson, how would you advise me to go from this entry level position to a CEO? And I thought really hard, and I said, well, that's easy, Grandpa. It's just a straight line. You just climb that corporate ladder, and quickly as possible, you just go from analyst in the beginning to CEO. And he laughed a little bit, and then he actually erased my line and drew this zigzag from one side of the board to the other about 6 or 7 times. And he said, the lesson I want you to take away from this is always begin with the end in mind. Always have a vision for the result that you're pursuing, but be flexible and be willing to adapt to change. Where you start today in your career, it most likely is not going to be where you end up. Of course, you always want to take time to think about it and to strategize and create a plan, but be flexible because success is not a straight line.
I love that, man. And for the listeners, that's not just if you want to be a CEO. Whatever that vision is up at the top of your whiteboard,
yes,
it's going to go the same way. And there's going to be twists and turns and things that, like Peter with the experience with his connection in investment banking, helping someone now, you never know what the opportunities that are going to arrive in your life when you take these steps. And so, Peter, I know you have to go at, was it 4:45, right? That's
maybe a little sooner,
okay,
Brian, so I may just have about 5 minutes left.
Okay, so 5 minutes. So one thing I did want to call out for the listeners is, again, the idea of, now, once Peter hit his success, then it's been nothing but sunshine and rainbows. Peter has faced, and the reason I know about this is because he is extremely open. Again, he practices what he preaches, and he puts this stuff up on Facebook. And I'll tell you, his videos are hugely inspirational. And Peter, would you mind if the listeners added you on Facebook?
Not at all. Yeah, if you guys just search Peter Scott IV as in the fourth, Peter Scott the fourth, you can find me. Would love for you to add me and send me a private message to introduce yourself and let me know you listened to this interview.
And guys, I'll include that link in the show notes. And trust me, his video, before we even started working together with coaching, his videos that he does every day, every couple of days, inspire me to get off my ass in 30 seconds, a minute. So I highly recommend it. It will change the entire composition of your Facebook feed. So it'll be 90 times more motivational. But so Peter, I think I'll do just one more question for the heart of the interview and then my closing question. But would you be willing to share a little bit of the recent struggles and the recent big challenges in your life and how you've worked through them? Because this is just a great lesson for the listeners that challenges will come throughout life, but how you grow and how you choose to face them makes all the difference.
Yes. So recently I have had an incredible amount of responsibility that I've been handling, from building a business to my grandmother became very, very ill, and I became the trustee of her estate. So now I'm responsible for everything financially. To the challenges that I'm experiencing in some relationships with friendships. And the thing that I was going through was I reached a certain threshold of thinking, I can't handle this anymore. I can't handle the pressure. I can't handle the responsibility. And the reality is there's a lot of things that I was experiencing that, Brian, were completely out of my control. Mm-hmm. Like I was focusing on things that I couldn't control. And when you do that, you will never be able to take responsibility and be in charge of your life. And so is going to be chaos that everyone goes through. There's going to be challenges that we experience in business. There's going to be losses that we have with friends and with family. And what I want the listener, and for you and I, Brian, to really remember is that focus only on what you can control. Mm-hmm. Focus only on what you can control and let go of the rest. One of the greatest experiences I had, and this happened through some challenging conversations I had with family, one of the greatest lessons came from my mentor, Jesse Elder, and he said, the greatest freedom in life is allowing others to have their own experience.
Wow.
You know, when you let go of having to fix your family or having to fix your boss, or, you know, when you let go of that and give them complete freedom to have their own life experience, mm-hmm. there's no more negative emotions in your life. You're no longer impacted by that. You're bulletproof in a way.
And for the listeners, I know all of us have experienced this. And if you've ever been lying, I just had an experience the other night. I was telling my dad that I was lying in bed, yep. having an argument in my head with a person I used to work, I don't even work with anymore, about something that never happened. And I was just sitting there like, you know, if they just changed, and you know what, and here's what I'd say, and then here's what they'd say, and then I'd say this really cool, you know, and it's like, and then I stepped back, I was like, what the hell am I doing? I was like, I just thought about the worst situation I could to piss myself off about someone else's behavior. And it's just like, again, I have no control. It has nothing to do with me. And I was just making that whole thing up. It's like, you know, because you create these situations in your mind based off traits in another person you've identified that you think should change. But what I found, and I think, Peter, you'll this is something you'll agree with, is that yep. Oftentimes when you're judging other people to change, you're projecting your own doubts, fears, and insecurities.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
something that is within you that you are terrified. It's so much scarier to look at yourself than it is to someone else. So maybe someone struggling with a weight issue might go, wow, that guy really needs to lose some weight. Someone struggling with a relationship might go, wow, those people need to communicate more. Taking the time to look at yourself is one of the most terrifying but also impactful things you will ever, maybe the most important thing you will ever do, because it allows you to be clear on your goals, to truly understand you and who you are and what impact you want to have on the world. And so, Peter, all right, so I always close out with one question, and I know we've got like maybe a minute or two left, so I'll close out with this question. And then I have one more quick little thing that I want to do. But so okay. The final question is, if you could go back and talk to yourself at graduation, if you could go back and talk to your 21, 22-year-old self and give yourself advice knowing everything you know now at 30, what would you say to yourself?
What I would say, the most important thing that's coming through me right now, Brian, is that at the end of the day, and I'm going to speak to myself, at the end of the day, you are the decision maker at the center of your own existence. You don't need to live your life to receive the approval, the validation, and the acceptance of your family, of your friends, of your boss. This is your one life. And it is your responsibility to create the most magnificent life you possibly can. It starts with the daily choices and actions that you make. Mm-hmm. To live a life where you allow others to control your life is a recipe for a life of indentured servitude. And so I want you to take the time over the years that you have ahead of you to get so clear on what is most important to you about the life that you want to live, and become so committed to pursue that no matter what obstacles you face, no matter what challenges you experience, no matter how many people disagree or don't support you along the way, and make that your highest purpose in life. At the end of the day, the best thing you can do is create the greatest quality of life for yourself and for your loved ones. And when you do that, you will be able to impact the world beyond your wildest imagination. That's the advice I would give myself.
Peter, I'm gonna have to say I'm a little upset with you, because that was so good that people won't hear the end of this interview, because they're gonna throw out their earbuds and go start doing whatever it is they want to in life. That was awesome, dude. That was fantastic. So, and actually, you know what? I'm not even gonna do the last question, because I can't think of a better way to close out than that. That was awesome, dude. Thank you. So what I will do now, and thank you again so much for being on the show, man. This has been fun, and I mean so much fun, and it gets me even more excited for the next 6 months and work we're going to be doing, which listeners you're going to be hearing all about. So if people want to come learn more about you and find out more about you, where should they go, and what things should they be looking forward to in the near future?
Appreciate you asking that, Brian. Well, the first thing is, if you love the message that I share, you can absolutely check me out on my website and my blog, which is designafearlesslife.com. Now, I want to give the listener, because I'm so passionate about not being far off from my early 20s, people that are in the position that you're in, and I have a book coming out called The Fearless Mindset. It's the entrepreneur's guide to get fit in less time, double your income, and become unstoppable. You can get a ton of free bonuses for the launch of that book at thefearlessmindset.com. I had the privilege of interviewing some of the most successful entrepreneurs on the planet that I know. You can get access to all those interviews. You can get access to a free 4-part video series of mine at thefearlessmindset.com. So go check that out. And again, definitely connect with me on social media, on Facebook. Brian, I think you're going to include the link to my profile, but I'd love to hear from each of you. And any way I can support you, Brian, any way I can support your audience, I would love to.
Thank you, man, so much. So guys, and seriously, if you hear about Peter on this show and we can connect you through Facebook, tell him, because that'll be encouraging for both of us. It'll be hugely encouraging for me, and he'll really appreciate it as my new coach. So
yes.
So, and just to know that his message inspired you, that's what it's really about. So if you're going through something tough and this touched you, if you're feeling inspired to get up and take action, reach out to Peter and just say thank you, because gratitude just spreads that feeling of joy throughout the world and encourages Peter to continue kicking ass doing what he does. So, Peter, thanks again so much, man. For all the listeners, you can go to overcominggraduation.com to get all the show notes, to Peter's Facebook, his website. You'll be able to take a look at his book, which do you have a projected publication date, Peter? Is that
so the projected publication date is going to be May 20th, so almost a month out.
Okay, May 20th. I thought it was going to be long. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So May 20th. So we'll have a contest so you can get their book out for it.
Exactly, yes.
But guys, check out his book, check out his page, his freebies, and I'm telling you, add him on Facebook, and just his free videos that he's putting up online are going to be impactful on your life. So, Peter, man, thank you so much again. I appreciate you and everything you do, and I'm so grateful to have you as my coach. And
Brian, it was a pleasure. Thank you, man. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Oh, this will not be the last time. That is for damn sure. All right, man. So we'll close out the call here, and thank you so much again.
All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. All right.